All right, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you all again this evening. As you know, Ms. Wilson mentioned to you, I am going to be talking to you about smart borrowing, and I like to say no before you go. And so I will be sharing my slides with Ms. Wilson. So don't feel like you have to write down every single thing because I definitely want to make sure um, that you get, all the information. So if you can't write it all down, that's okay. We're going to be fine. We'll be able to rock and roll. Now, one of the things I think she mentioned or heard her mention was that, as you have questions, please be sure to put those in the chat, and then, of course, again, there will be time for Q&A at the very end. So I wanted to start off by just kind of giving you an idea of what we're going to talk about this evening. So one of the things we're going to talk about would be student loan basics, so basic terms, types of loans. I think that Ms. Wilson mentioned that. And we're going to talk about what is a loan servicer, what is their role, um, when will they contact you or your student. We'll also be talking a little bit about repayment. I know that, it seems like it's going to be a long time before we have to worry about loan repayment, but I would like for students and parents to understand their rights and responsibilities. And so we're going to talk about when does repayment begin, repayment options, and then kind of what else do you need to know? So loan forgiveness. We'll talk a little bit about delinquency or default. Hopefully we don't have to worry about that, but it's good to know about those things, loan cancellation, and then resources and just tips in general. So as we talk about student loan basics, as you know, loans is money that's being borrowed, and it's something that you're going to have to repay back at some point, right? So, which is why borrowing is only recommended if you need it. So we want to exhaust all other possibilities. So we want to look at, are we eligible for grants? What types of scholarships can we apply for? Which ones are we receiving? There are payment plans where you can pay out of your pocket, out of current income, and so just small increments. And so you want to definitely check and see if the colleges offer some type of payment plan that you can be put on. Of course, payment plans for college expenditures are, interest free, but you still have to pay maybe enrollment fee to participate in the program. So also you see on the screen interest and capitalization of interest. So this is what you're charged for using someone else's money. So you get to borrow the money, but there is interest that's associated with it. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So what are the types of federal student loans that are out there? So you might be familiar with the direct loan program. And so under the direct loan program, there are two basic types of student loans. You have subsidized and unsubsidized. So I try to break it down as simple as I could for you. So when we talk about subsidized, that is a need-based loan. And so there's no interest that's accumulating as long as the student's in school at least part-time. So that's half-time enrollment. So many times when you see part-time or half-time enrollment, we're talking about at least 6 credit hours. This is the student's debt. So if there are parents listening in tonight, this is not your debt. This is the student, your student's debt. There's no credit check for students, but they do have to sign a master promissory note. We're going to talk about the master promissory note a little bit later on in our conversation this evening. But just in a nutshell, it is a document that students will sign to say they understand the rights and responsibilities associated with assuming a loan. And so we also see that your students might get this type of loan, but they also could see on their financial aid offer from the college or university that they may have unsubsidized loans. So this is not based upon need. So that means that interest is accumulating right away. Again, this is the student's debt. Again, there's no credit check. And of course, you have to sign a promissory note. Now, under this type of loan, typically a student will have a standard repayment a policy, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So there's 10 years to repay the loan. There's no prepayment penalties. And of course, the smallest payment that a student would have is $50. But depending on how much they've borrowed, it could be, more than that. But, depending on what their loan payment is, they'll pay under a standard loan repayment. We'll talk about this a little bit later. They're going to pay the same amount for 10 years until that account has been paid in full. Some other types of federal loans that you might see, of course, would be the Parent Plus loan. Now, Plus stands for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. Now, in the previous slide, we talked about, the direct loans or subsidized and unsubsidized loans as being the student's debt. The one thing that you notice here, even though your student or the student is, I guess you say, benefiting from the loan, you'll notice that the difference is the Parent Plus loan is the parent's debt. There is also another very noticeable difference here. So in the previous slide, for the student's debt, no credit check. Parent Plus loan, guess what? There is a credit check. So, of course, this is not based upon need. Interest accumulates right away. And you'll see that as a parent, you also would have to sign a master promissory note, or we call it an MPN. And so there are also graduate professional loans out there. And so, of course, it could be that after your student finishes their undergraduate work, they may need to have a loan for graduate or professional studies. Now, also, as we talk about loans, one of the things I want to remind you of is that, of course, loans, again, should be the last thing that you consider. But you also want to look at what your student's eligible for in their name first, because they're going to always get the best rates. And then, of course, you always want to look at federal loans, and then think about educational goals. And I always say this in every presentation when I talk about loans: is borrow responsibly. Don't borrow any more than you absolutely have to. And then also to think about what you're trying to do as far as profession, what you're trying to do as far as future college, or so forth. So when you see private loans, or you might hear people refer to private loans as alternative loans. So these are not federal loans. This allows your student to borrow above and beyond what they're eligible for in federal dollars. So basically, this type of loan is meant to bridge that gap between the actual cost of your student's education and the amount that the government is allowing your student to borrow for its programs. So private loans are offered by private lenders, okay? And there are no federal forms to complete. And so, of course, as you're looking at lenders, they will tell you all the qualifications to be able to be considered for that loan. A lot of times you'll hear lenders say you might have to be credit worthy. So there is a credit check, perhaps. And then, of course, sometimes students may not have enough credit or no credit, or their credit may not be strong enough to stand alone. So if your student is looking at private loans or alternative loans, they may have to have what we call a cosigner, or you might hear some lenders refer to it as a surety. So just something for you to think about. Now, your private loans and your federal loans are not consolidated together. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of. But this is just another option. So think about what your students are trying to do. You don't want them to have a whole lot of loan indebtedness, period. And then if your student's thinking about, professional school or graduate school in the future, you don't want them to be bogged down a whole lot of loan debt as an undergraduate student. Now, this is a state-funded loan program, and it's called NC Assist. And so this is available to students who are North Carolina residents, and they might be attending school inside the state, or it could be outside the state. Sometimes there are people who are not from North Carolina, but they're attending North Carolina schools, and they can take advantage of the North Carolina NC Assist program. So there's no application fee, there's no origination fee, there are no prepayment fees ever for this. And of course, the interest rates, can, adjust, from year to year, depending on what the rate is. But once you have a rate, your interest rate is fixed, it's not variable. So, so whatever year you borrow, whatever that rate is for the year you borrow, it is going to be a fixed rate. So on the screen here, you'll see what the interest rate is. So 5.50%. And then, of course, if you make your payments through auto draft, then you will see a 0.25% reduction in interest rate. So again, there are no prepayment penalties for this. Of course, if you want to learn a little bit more about the NC Assist program, either for students or for the parent borrower, you can go to ncassist.org. Now let's talk a little bit about loan limits. So, before you even get to the loan, let me just back up a little bit. If your student is a senior, then hopefully you have done the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And that's a document that Department of Education makes available if students want to be considered for federal state grants, federal loans, federal work study. So hopefully you've done that. And so that's kind of like the catalyst to getting things started. And so that helps the financial aid offices to determine what your students' eligibility for loans might be. So, of course, again, when your student completes the FAFSA, there are questions that will ask your student, well, excuse me, I should say there are questions being asked that your student will have to answer to determine whether they're dependent or independent. So the FAFSA form is very important if you're considering loans. So you can't get a loan until you've done it, because they won't know what type of loan you're eligible for. They won't know if your student is dependent or independent. So we need to make sure that we're aware of that. So what you're going to see here would be subsidized loan amounts and unsubsidized. So we've talked about those terms, and you'll see the annual limit. So of course, you're also looking at your student's classification or grade level. So it's going to tell you how much your student could get if they were a first year undergraduate student, or if they were in the second year and they're undergraduate student. And then you'll notice here on this chart, third and fourth year undergraduate students, it's the same amount. So of course, we're just going to start with first year undergrad. You'll see your student can get as much as $3,500 for need-based. Remember, subsidized is need-based, and unsubsidized is not based on need. So your student can qualify for additional $2,000. So the annual limit here would be $5,500. Now, just know that even if your student sees on their financial award offer that they're eligible for a certain amount, your student does not have to accept the full amount. They can accept, or decline, a portion of it. And you'll also notice at the very bottom of my screen is giving information about aggregate limits for undergraduate dependent students. So it'll tell you how much your student can borrow ultimately. And so you want to make sure that your student is not exceeding, they won't be able to exceed, but you want to make sure they're not getting close to those loan limits. So you'll see here the aggregate limit for undergraduate dependent students, so keyword is dependent student, is $31,000 with no more than $23,000 in subsidized loans. So that's one of the things that financial aid offices will be keeping in mind, and your student wants to keep in mind as well. Now, most of your students are probably going to be, dependent, but you could have a student who might be independent, or maybe a student's dependent, but their parent was denied the PLUS loan. Remember, the PLUS loan is based upon credit worthiness. So you'll see here, if the student's grade level was, a year one or first year undergraduate student, the subsidized amount would be $3,500, right? So that's the same, but unsubsidized would go up. So, instead of it being that additional $2,000, you'll see that it's an additional what? A little bit more than that. So, so you'll see here, it would be unsubsidized would be $6,000. So that annual limit goes up. So you're looking at $9,500. So again, there's still aggregate loan limits, and you want to make sure that you're adhering to those. Now, we talked about the master promissory note, or what we call the NPN. So this is what I was telling you guys earlier. So it tells the student about their rights, or I should say the borrower. So in case, so the student or the borrower contains their rights and responsibilities. So this is a binding legal document that your student or you are signing to indicate they understand they are committing to repaying these loans under the terms of the agreement. So want to make sure that you're aware of that. So if you have any questions about the master promissory note, you can always check with your loan servicer or the campus that your student is going to be attending school for. Now, I also want to make sure that you understand that your student will go through interest loan counseling, so they understand these rights and responsibilities. And when they separate or graduate or depart from the institution, they go through exit loan counseling. So it's not going to just be a one-time thing learning this information. So it will be information that they will hear again. So if students want to, or borrowers want to complete or check the master promissory note information. You'll see I'm providing a website, studentaid.gov, which is the website, or you can go to the mobile app. So My Student Aid, so either one. So so if you're an Apple person, you can go to your Apple Store or your Google Play Store if you use other types of services. So now that brings me to this wonderful question: what's a loan servicer? So I know that parents, I'm sure that you're aware of that, but for students who are participating, might not know all about what a loan servicer does. So basically, this is a public or private entity that collects, monitors, and reports loan payments. So every 30 days, that whatever you paid or you haven't been paying or whatever, once you go into repayment, is being reported on your credit bureau report. So it's very important that you are being responsible with how you're handling your loans. So you should be notified by your loan servicer once your loan is fully dispersed to your school. And then if you have any questions, you can always talk to your financial aid office. So your loan servicer can transfer your loans. So your lender can transfer your loan to another lender. So you need to be aware of that. And if that happens, the original lender or whoever initially had your loan and the new holder of that loan must notify you in writing. So they let you know, hey, you had this lender, but now you have this other one. So they're going to let you know some type of written communication. So that's going to tell you the new holder or new lender's name, address, telephone number. So you know how to be in contact with them. It's going to talk to you also about terms and conditions regarding your loan. So it's very important that you pay attention to information that you're receiving and making sure that as a borrower, that you're keeping your information current with your loan servicer. Very important. So if your address changes, your email address changes, your telephone number changes, you're keeping your records current. So now let's talk a little bit about repayment. So repayment begins 6 months after someone graduates or if they fall below half-time enrollment. So remember what I said, if you fall below half-time enrollment, it's not always because someone has graduated, but it could be that they left school, they dropped out, for various reasons. So you have that 6-month window before repayment will actually begin. So we call that 6-month window a grace period. So that begins the day after you start attending on or at least half-time basis. And so I just want to make sure that you're familiar with that. Now, there are several repayment options that I'm going to talk to you about today. I know it's a lot of information. It's really heavy, and you're going to hear this information again. So this is kind of a summary of all the different programs that we're going to try and touch on briefly this evening. So once you go into repayment or about to go into repayment, you'll be communicating with your loan servicer, trying to figure out what options are available. Now, if you do not choose, any type of payment option or repayment option, you will default to what we call a standard repayment. And that's what I mentioned to you before. So the default is always going to say standard repayment unless you choose something else. So you'll see some of these, 10 years like standard, graduated is 10 years. You'll see a few other ones that may say 25 years. So there are some things that you'll see here. You'll see some that I'll talk about that will tell you it could be, it might not be part of a public service loan forgiveness. You'll see some that will talk about more of income driven. So you'll see lots of different things today. Now, here's the standard repayment. We talked about this earlier. So remember, you have that 10-year repayment term. Remember, I told you at the very beginning, the smallest payment you could ever have is $50. But depending on how much you borrowed, it could be higher. So remember, with this one, you're going to pay the same amount for 10 years until that account has been paid off. And then you have another one. We call this graduated. And you might think it's probably what it sounds like, and you're right. So it's graduated. So that means your payments are lower when you first begin. And then over time, they're going to get a little bit, higher, usually every 2 years or so. So you'll pay a little bit more than the 10-year standard plan. Okay. So, but you have 10 years repay. And if I didn't say this before, you don't have any prepayment penalties. So this is not something that is automatic. Now remember, anything other than the standard repayment, you have to request this from your loan servicer. We also have something we call extended repayment. So as we talk about extended repayment, these payments may be fixed or graduated. And so you have up to 25 years to repay. So now there's one key thing that I want you to see here. So you must have more than what? $30,000 in outstanding loan debt. Okay, so that's going to be a key. You have to have at least that amount. So you're going to pay more than the standard 10-year repayment plan for that. So of course, anytime that you stretch something out, you're going to end up paying more. But there is no prepayment penalty if you want to go that route. And then we have some income-based repayment. So I know you might not be thinking this far in advance, but I do want to point out some key things. And over time, by the time your student is ready to get to this point, there may be other, or additional repayment options out there. But here are the common ones right now. So you'll see income-based repayment, or we call it IBR. We use a lot of acronyms in the financial aid world. So payments will be either 10 or 15% of your discretionary income, but never more than you would have paid in the standard 10-year repayment. So you'll see that payments are recalculated each year based upon your income and family size. So if you have any outstanding balance on your loan, it will be forgiven after 20 or 25 years, depending on when you receive your loan, your first loan. So definitely this might be an option for you. So I'm going to let you kind of marinate on that a little bit. And then we have another income-based repayment. We call this income contingent repayment. I know it's a lot. ICR. So we went from IBR to ICR. So your monthly payments would be the lesser of either 20% of your discretionary income, or the amount you would pay on a repayment plan with your fixed payment over 12 years. So anytime you see income in front, usually it's going to mean that it's got something to do with your income. So this is adjusted according to your income. And so payments are recalculated every so often. It's based upon your income. They look at your family size. So those are some things. Now, look at that. Let's see, the third bullet point. So any outstanding balance will be forgiven if you haven't repaid your loan in full after 25 years. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. So let's see, where are we? Income sensitive repayment. We've talked about, this is another income one. So your monthly payment is based on annual income, right? And your loan will be paid in full within 15 years. Sorry. Something got caught in my throat a little bit. So you'll usually pay more than the standard 10-year plan. So this is available for a program that we used to have. It was called the Federal Family Education Loan Program. So I just want to let you know about that. So this was available for that plan. So this is a funny one. Pay as you earn. So it's not funny based upon what it does, but sorry guys, something has got caught in my throat here. So pay as you earn, or we call it pay. So your monthly payments will be 10% of discretionary income, but never more than you would have paid under the 10-year standard repayment plan. Okay, so you must have a high debt relative to your income to qualify. Now, payments are also recalculated each year and are based on your updated income and family size. So again, this one is called pay. Now, any outstanding balance on your loan will be forgiven if you haven't repaid your loan in full after, again, 20 years. Let's see here. A couple other things I want you to understand. So some of these repayment plans, they will tell you some certain things that have to happen in order for you to qualify for the plan. So to qualify for this plan, so this is, towards the end of the screen, I'll say to qualify for this plan, you must be a new borrower on or after October 1, 2007. So, and you must have received a disbursement of a direct loan on or after October 1 of 2011. So some of these might have some things like that. All right. So, okay, so we talked about pay. Guess what we have now? Repay. I know. So, but repay. So this is a revised pay-as-you-earn repayment. So again, your monthly payments will be 10% of discretionary income. Payments are recalculated each year based upon your same thing. You're going to see some things that are constant, your income and family size. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. Now, what else do we see that's consistent that we've talked about this evening? So we also see that any outstanding balance on your loan will be forgiven if you haven't fully repaid your loan after how many years? 20 years if it's an undergraduate loan, or 25 years for your graduate loans. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, some of these things I'm just kind of explaining to you how they work, but because there's some rules for certain types of payment plans. I do recommend that you talk to your loan servicer and let them advise you, and they can tell you, what you may qualify for, and they can also tell you what would be most advantageous for you. Now, I get a lot of questions about loan consolidation. So let's talk about that a little bit. So this is what we consider to be extended repayment up to 30 years based upon your loan balance. So this is good if you have loans with several different loan servicers or lenders. So instead of having to pay, 2 or 3 different, entities, then you're taking all of those loans and you consolidate it into one payment or one monthly bill. And so that can be helpful. But a lot of times what we say is that before you go to think about consolidation, you want to make sure you understand what type of repayment, benefits you have under your I guess you say your current, let me say that, your current loan before you think about rolling into a consolidation. Because sometimes, when you think about consolidating, what's going to happen is you're going to lose your borrower benefits you had, previously. Okay, so that can be lost. So you want to weigh and balance to see, okay, I'm losing this benefit, but I'm gaining, maybe more time to pay off my loan. I'm not paying 2 or 3, entities. So just something for you to think about. But still, this is going to be a fixed interest rate. Okay. Let me point this out before I go to the next slide. I forgot to mention to you this too. Some other things that you can lose other than your borrower benefits, certain types of deferments, we haven't talked about that, forgiveness, so cancellation and grace period benefits. So, but we're going to cover forgiveness, and we're going to cover deferment in a little bit. So this is right on time. So public service loan forgiveness. So to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, or we say PSLF, I told you this is like alphabet soup. So you have to be employed by a U.S. federal, state, local, or tribal government, or a not-for-profit organization. Work full-time for that agency or organization. So you have direct loans. So that can be, some of the ones that we talked about, or consolidate other federal student loans into a direct loan. And we just, this is right on time because we just talked about consolidation. So this is the other thing. Repay your loans under an income-driven repayment plan. And so we talked about some of those income-based plans. And then you also have to make sure you're meeting this one. Make 120 qualifying payments. Okay. Now here's some resources. So as we're talking about resources for loan forgiveness, here's a website that you can definitely go to for more information. Remember, you don't have to write down. I know it's a long address. You don't have to feel compelled to write it down. But I'll be sharing the information with Ms. Wilson. But you can also contact your lender or your servicer. So you can contact your lender or your servicer, or contact your HR department at your place of employment. Regarding eligibility, you can do that as well. Now, other loan forgiveness options out there, you've probably heard about teacher loan forgiveness. So, of course, again, for direct loans, so your first loan was made on or after October 1, 1998. You teach in a qualifying low-income, school for 5 consecutive years. And so it tells you a little bit about how much could possibly be forgiven. So $17,500 or $5,000 forgiven. So that's one. So there's also another program I hope that you've heard about. We try to advertise as much as we can, but there's a North Carolina Forgivable Education Loan for Service. So North Carolina Forgivable Education Loan for Service, or we call it FELS, F-E-L-S. So in the state of North Carolina, there's some critical needs areas where we need more people to work in certain professions. So that would be, for example, teaching, okay? It's not every type of teacher. There's certain types of programs that qualify. Nursing, we need nurses at all levels. There's some allied health careers, and so some examples would be pharmacy, PT, PA, or physician assistant. There's lots of different programs that are listed. So, of course, for this particular program, you have to have a certain GPA. Again, we talk about majors, and you have to attend a school that's eligible. Most of the schools are in North Carolina, but there are a few programs that we have a relationship with a school outside of North Carolina. So there is a comprehensive list on our website. So you definitely want to check that out. So the first time your student can apply for this program would be in the senior year. So if we have any seniors here, you have to have at least a 3.0 weighted GPA. And so you just missed the deadline for this. March 1 is always the deadline. If you did not apply, of course, before, you were an undergraduate student, you can apply once you get to your school. So this is, not something that you can't apply for in the future. You also have to see, how can you say? You also have to make sure, is the major that you're considering, is it going to be for grad or undergrad? Okay, so definitely want to look at that information as well. Now, one other component that you don't see on my screen, if you get money for this program, you do have to agree to work in the state of North Carolina 1 year for every year that you receive the funds. So that is forgiven. Now, I'm going to pause here just for a moment to kind of let you look at some of the programs. So you'll see when I said allied health, there's lots of different programs here, lots of things under education. Here's some other things that are falling under allied health. You'll see nursing, education. Now, other possible options, health career forgiveness, state or hospital systems, National Guard or AmeriCorps programs. It could be your employer. Now, I also want to talk to you about some other options, and I promise I won't be before you too much longer. So let's talk about some things that might be helpful to you in repayment. So let's kind of recap. So far we've talked about what? We talked about the different types of loans that are out there. We talked about several different repayment options that are out there. We talked about loan forgiveness. So let's just talk about some other options that might be helpful to you. Now, you might have heard the term deferment. So when your students are in school and they have loans and their enrollees have time and they're not having to make payments on those loans, then what they're in is a deferment. They just don't realize it. They're in what we call an in-school deferment. So this is a time period where repayment is temporarily suspended. So you're not making any type of payments on your loans. So deferment can occur not only when your students enrollees have time and at an eligible school. Let me just put that in there. But it could be, they could possibly qualify for one if they're experiencing some type of economic hardship. It could be something like unemployment, military service, just to give you a few examples. So those are times when a deferment, might be granted. So you'll definitely have to talk to your loan servicer. So one of the things I had in one of my leading slides before we began is, when do you need to contact your servicer? When do you need to communicate with them? So, so if you don't know, or you think that you might qualify for a deferment based upon something that's happening, you can definitely talk with your servicer. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this, okay? So let's see, forbearance, okay? So maybe you're unable to make your regular payments, okay, for some reason, whatever reason it might be. But let's think about it. Maybe you don't qualify for any deferment. So we talked about some of the deferments, but you looked at that list and you're like, nothing there seems to apply, okay? So if that's the case, then you might possibly find that a forbearance might be something that your loan servicer may recommend or suggest. So what is a forbearance? Okay, you know that you're not able to make your regular or your scheduled payments. So forbearance allows you to do what? So you reduce the amount of your payment and you temporarily stop payment. So two things. So you reduce the amount of your payment and you temporarily stop your payments. So most forbearances are discretionary. So it's up to your loan servicer or it's up to your lender to decide if they're going to grant one for you. So just letting you know how that works. Now I'm going to this is not my favorite slide at all, but I feel like I need to, share information. I'm trying to give you some what ifs, this may happen, this could happen, but we do need to touch on delinquency and default. So I hope that no one falls into this, but I want you to understand, things happen. But I'm going to tell you, before I tell you about delinquency and default, I want to tell you that it's something that's very serious. And there are so many things that you can do to prevent it from happening. And one thing is to communicate with your loan servicer. So if you find out that you're having a hard time or something is occurring, communication is key. That's what their job is. They're there to help you. They want you to be able to meet your obligation. So delinquency default, that's when you fail to make your payments on time and that you're not, you're delinquent in meeting your obligation. So this doesn't mean that you missed a payment 1 month or 2 months or 60 days or, or 30 days or whatever. It means that you have failed to make your payments for 270 days. Okay. So think about that. 270 days. That's almost what? You guessed it. Almost a whole year, right? So that means that you consistently haven't been making those payments for almost a year. And so you'll be in default on your loan. Default does not come without consequences. So let's talk about, what are those consequences? If you default on your loan, you can damage your credit rating. Don't want to do that, okay? So they can, there can be a referral to a collection agency. Collection costs, if any of those are incurred, they're your responsibility. They're added to your debt, right? Your wages can be garnished, federal and state tax refunds, your Social Security benefits can be withheld. There could be a civil lawsuit filed against you, court costs and legal fees, loss of deferments and forbearance entitlements. Okay, so you remember we just talked about forbearances and deferments and what they do for you. But here it's telling you that you can lose those privileges. Loss of repayment option flexibility. So all of those flexible plans that we talked about, you lose that flexibility, and loss of eligibility for further financial aid. So that's a biggie. So if you want to go back to school or finish your education and you need financial aid, if you are in default, you have lost the eligibility to be considered for financial aid. Okay. So when we talk about financial aid, that umbrella, your student loans, your grants, those types of things. And the last one, it really hurts me. It really hurts me. Is suspension of a professional license. So you work really hard and there can be a suspension of your professional license. So just want you to know about that. All right, let's talk about loan cancellation. So how can your loan be canceled? I know you're thinking that, so let's talk about it. So your loan can be canceled if you what? If there's death, if you become totally and permanently disabled, your school closes, so you're unable to complete your program of study because of it. Your loan was falsely certified, so that might mean that something like identity theft has happened. Your school falsely certified or fraudulently completed a loan application in your name and you didn't approve it. So these are some ways that a loan would be canceled. Now, let's talk about this. Remember I told you it's important for you to know what? The very first thing we talked about is understanding your rights and responsibilities. You will have to go through interest loan counseling and exit loan counseling. Interest loan counseling and exit loan counseling. And so if you're having trouble making your payments, you need to contact your loan servicer. Now, one of the things I always like to say when I'm giving presentations or doing meetings like this is that, you want to know your rights and responsibilities. You want to know who you need to contact if you're having trouble. You want to know what options are readily available to you. Because like I said before, you may be able to reduce your monthly payments. You may qualify for a different type of repayment plan. There might be some kind of a deferment that you qualify for. We talked about forbearances, but your loan servicer doesn't know how to help you if you don't share information. They won't know why you're not making your payments. All they know is that you haven't contacted them and you haven't, made any payments. But I want to tell you this, loans can be a good thing if you're handling them responsibly. So that means they can help you build your credit. So if you don't have a lot of credit, I can just say for me, when I was a student, I had a loan, and that was the first thing to help me build credit. Because guess what? When I graduated, what do you want? What does this world as soon as they graduate? They want a what? A CAR, right? A car, right? So they want a car. That's the very first thing that students are looking to have. So they're gonna look at your credit. I remember my very first car. So if you've ever been in a session with me, I like to give stories. I try to stay on, Ms. Wilson, I try to keep from saying a lot of stories tonight, but I'm gonna say this one. But when I had my student loan, when I graduated, I wanted to have a new car, and I needed one because my old one, I had gotten in a car accident, and so need a new car, right? So my first car that I bought on my own, with my money, I had I think a 1.9 interest rate, and I was so excited. So students, if you don't know very much about interest rates and things of that nature, you might not know that 1.9 is really good. So ask your parents about it. But anyway, so you want, they can help you build credit, okay? Establish credit if you never had credit. So, you want to make sure that you're being responsible. And the other thing too, another thing to go along with me getting a car, after, I graduated, got on my feet, started working a little bit, I wanted to get what? I wanted to find a new place to stay because, I didn't want to be with my parents forever, right? So I wanted to get an apartment. And what do? They look at your credit, okay? So those are some things to just make sure that you guys are aware of. I know we're getting short on time, and Ms. Wilson, I want to make sure that we leave time for a few questions. I see some people might have put some things in the chat. So helpful tips. keep your loan records organized. Keep track of your loan records. You can go to studentaid.gov. I mentioned that website a few times this evening. Know how much your loan payments will be. So talk to your loan servicer. I know a lot of websites, they have calculators. Remember, each year, if you keep borrowing, your payments can be a little bit more, but always, know how much you're going to have to repay. Okay. Remember that your loan servicer will let you know more about repayment as you get close to that time and let you know about the schedule. Make sure you know when your payment date is. Make sure that you're including your student loan in your budget. So you want to, create a budget or, spending plan. Even if your budget or your spending plan changes, you need to have a budget. Make sure you include your student loan in it. So remember that we talked about if you do not make another choice once you go into repayment, your loan servicer will put you on a standard repayment plan. And so that means that they look at how much you borrow and they're going to divide, how much you're, they're going to divide how much you owe into equal payments so that you will pay it off within 10 years. And the smallest payment you can ever have is that $50 that we talked about. So here's some additional resources. So again, that's studentaid.gov. If you've never been to that website, get there. Okay, lots of great information, lots of good resources. CFNC.org, we have lots of information to help you learn about different ways to pay for college. We talked about alternative loan programs. So we talked about the NC Assist loan. And so, of course, making sure that you know about those resources. And I want you guys to stay in the know, by staying connected with us. CFNC, we're a nonprofit. We're a service of the state of North Carolina. So you'll see that we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, Instagram. You'll see my handles here. And then if you want to follow me specifically, again, I am Tequila Barnes Hall. I'm your regional representative for the 336 telephone area code. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Unfortunately, can't do all the platforms. It takes a lot to keep content up to date. So our team keeps all the social media channels going, but I have my own for Instagram and Facebook for my area. So if you want to connect with me, Tequila at CFNC. I post just about every day, except for the weekends. On the weekends, those are my 2 days to kind of to relax and to rejuvenate for the next week. So every once in a while I might put a post or two on the weekends, but Monday through Friday, more than likely, almost every day, you're going to see a post on either my Instagram or Facebook, or sometimes both. Sometimes they're not always the very same posts. There may be some things I put on Facebook that are not on Instagram, or vice versa. So you probably want to make sure you connect with me on both platforms. But follow me on my social media pages. So Tequila, so you see my name at the bottom. Let me see if I can point to it for you. Tequila at CFNC. That's my handle. And if you have any questions, you make sure that you're staying in contact with us. So you can call our office Monday through Thursday, or on Friday, we have more standard hours. We have extended hours through the week. And our toll-free number is 866-866-CFNC. So you'll actually see the numbers that represent the CFNC. So, we have people hours Monday through Thursday, but Friday is standard business hours, the 8 to 5. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to turn it back over to our facilitator, Ms. Wilson. I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to see what questions you guys have for me tonight.
Excellent. Thank you again, Tequila, for just a wonderful and super informative presentation. We do have a couple of questions. I'd like to go ahead and read those out if I could. So let's say the first one, could we please repeat the resources slide? Could we please show that resources slide one more time?
Sure.
For folks to be able to grab that information.
Okay, give me 2 seconds and I'll start my share again. Let's see. I wanted to actually, I had one more slide that I wanted to include, but I didn't have all the information. Did it not share?
And that's okay. We will, if you can see the resources slide here, go ahead and copy that information. If there's anything though that Tequila would like for us to share, we can share that. We'll post it in the student portal along with the recording of this presentation. So everybody who's here tonight, if you need to look back or refer to anything, don't worry. We'll make it easy and available for you. We'll post it in the portal. I do have a couple of questions just really quickly. Let's see, Deb asked, do loans that are forgiven after 20 or 25 years have a negative impact on credit score? For example, would this be an obstacle to purchasing a home?
No, so loan forgiveness is something that is made available to be able to help. So no, it's not going to affect you adversely. If you're, there are different types of loan forgiveness. So you saw some of the payment plans if it wasn't paid in full within 20 to 25 years. And then you saw another type of loan forgiveness, which, would be, because you're providing some type of maybe public service or for critical needs. So it's not going to, keep you from being able to do those types of things. But if you had any questions or concerns, you can always talk to your loan servicer.
Excellent. I have another question that says, do we need to contact someone about forgiveness? And I'm assuming this person maybe means like forgivable education loans for service or loan forgiveness at a certain time period as they approach that 10 or 20-year time frame?
So, so for those questions, anytime that you have questions at all, you definitely want to talk to your loan servicer. And they can tell you, what that's going to mean, at what point. Like even for, if you think you qualify or can qualify for teacher loan forgiveness, make sure that you talk to your loan servicer, and they can, explain that a little bit more for you. For one of the bullet points I had up talked about the North Carolina Forgivable Education Loan for Service. For that particular program, you do have you complete a promissory note. Very much like you would, the loans that we talked about before. And so when you finish your program, they will be in touch with you to find out, are you ready to fulfill your commitment? And, of course, if you decide, hey, I'm not even going to work in that profession, I know I received the money, but I'm not going to do that, then, of course, you would have to repay that one, back, okay, for that, because there's a critical needs area and they really want to get people to need people desperately to work. But let's say that you get that particular program, the money for that program, and you finish your undergraduate work, and then you decide, hey, you know what, I want to go back to school. Well, it's kind of like the loans that we talked about before. If you go back to school, they can defer your repayment again until you finish the next time. So make sure you're talking to whoever you're participating in that program with, and if it's a traditional federal loan, then you're going to be communicating with your loan servicer.
Excellent. Those are great questions. Thank you, Tequila.
Those are great questions.
Yeah, really great. Before we log off, guys, I just want to really quickly mention just a couple of things. The first is that I ask that everyone please go ahead and click on this post-webinar survey that you see in the chat box. Again, it's super short, very brief. This just really helps us. It's extremely helpful in a way that allows us to kind of tailor programming and events with you in mind, with your input. Please take a moment to answer those couple of questions before you go. Also, before we log off, I'd just like to mention a couple of additional opportunities for aid that you can take advantage of as a Crosby Scholar. The first is, of course, Crosby Scholars scholarship opportunities. And those opportunities are still available for students inside the Crosby Scholars student portal. So you'll check your student portal every single week, namely on Mondays, for new scholarship opportunities to pop up. Please take advantage of those opportunities, apply for as many as you're eligible to apply for. Every single week, we're offering new opportunities throughout the month of March and into April. So you still have some time to get those applications in. Remember that these opportunities are only available to Crosby Scholars, so take advantage of that. The second really great resource for funding is Crosby Scholars Last Dollar Grant, which is a need-based grant of up to $1,200 per year for up to 4 years of undergraduate study. The application for Last Dollar Grant will appear in your student portal beginning, it's generally in April, so keep your eyes out for that opportunity. Like I said, this is really unique to being a Crosby Scholar, so take advantage of both these opportunities. Of course, if you have any questions about scholarships, Last Dollar Grant, financial aid, the FAFSA, anything that you've heard here tonight, of course, know that you can reach out to me at any time, Ashley Wilson. My email address is awilson@crosbyscholars.org. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime. And I'm here to help. So that's it for me, everyone. Thank you again for joining. We're so glad to see everybody here tonight. This is one of our just really, in my opinion, most informative webinars. It's such great information. So I'm so excited to see so many folks on the call. But thank you again for your time tonight. And thank you again to Tequila. Everyone, thanks again and have a great evening.
Thank you.